Hey, this is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. I am 1 minute 30 seconds late because OBS updated and I had to train OBS to recognize the game again. Hey AJ, thank you for moderating my stream once more. Whatever icons or emojis that you're posting in the chat. I hope you are as excited as I am about another stream in Switzerland where we will have an in-depth look on the train protection system that there still is around in Switzerland. As far as I know, has not been completely replaced by ETCS, but will be soon if it is not already replaced completely. So we will be playing the Luzern Sursee DLC and we will be playing a scenario. The scenario that is called the Shower Express. Why this? Because it gives us some more insights in some signaling issues and the workings of the Euro-Signum over ETCS. The Shower Express, you like it? That is good. At least we don't have to worry about setting the weather because it is scripted. Hey CD Radar again. Nice to see you. Yeah, I was just starting to explain what we are going to do today. We will have a look on Euro-Signum, what is left of the original Integra Signum train protection system that was around in Switzerland for decades until it has been more or less replaced by ETCS, and in a short time between Integra Signum and ETCS there was something called Euro-Signum and Euro-ZUB, and we will have a look how all this fits together into a picture. At the beginning of this scenario we are waiting at the red light and we have to let this train pass, then the signal switches to a green signal with a 6 telling us that we have a clear track in front of us, but we are restricted to 60. Okay, what does the scenario want us to do? It wants us to switch on the lights in the cab and in the train. So typically the train should be dark. There are already some people inside the train, but it is still dark and it displays this strange reading on the PIS for Gütsch, what we can also see here. If that is what it is supposed to show here, I don't know. This is the button where we can turn on the passenger lights in this train. You can see now the passengers are no longer sitting in the darkness, and then it leads us through the setup of the train, unlock and the reverser, and then it wants us to release the brakes and drive into the station. And just as a reminder, we get a green signal with a speed limit, but nevertheless a green signal, and a green signal should never lead to the next signal to be red, right? Let's see what we get. So there is no need to be cautious because we got a green signal. We stay way beyond the 60 and are running into the station across a switch, and then we say, what is that signal up ahead? Doesn't it not look a bit red? And well, yeah, it is red. Good thing we did not trust the green signal here, because we got another signal progression of green to red. Maybe you remember that we got a similar problem on the last service last week when we were driving from Luzern to Sursee and were sent across a switch with a limit of 60, and also there a red light followed directly on a green one. Now we're sitting here and they are telling us to couple to this train in front of us. You can see there is another train sitting on the platform, and we want to go in there. The light is red, so we cannot go in there. The signaling issues, I don't think so. No, I think this is actually a glitch, right? And there should be a yellow signal before you get a red signal. And now that we are driving into the block that is already occupied by another train, we have to contact the signaler, and the signaler is telling us proceed at restricted speed. That makes sense, we can go in, but obviously we have to do this very cautiously. And what does he give us on the signal? He gives us a yellow. Okay, this makes sense because the next signal is most probably red, but nothing but the yellow. Yellow does not necessarily require you to go slow, because you have all the block in front of you and we can see the train now, so nothing bad can happen. But in case it is dark, the train is not lit, we could just enter the block and think, okay, we know where the next signal is, and stop in front of it, and then we don't know that there is a train sitting in there. Also, the shunting signal that we see here tells us that the next signal will be red, so we have to proceed with caution. That all makes sense, but I think that the signaler should have shown us a bit more on this signal here than just a yellow one. And to show you what I think that he should have shown us, I will switch to the presentation already for a quick look into that. This is our train, this is our track, and at the end of the platform there is the red signal, and we have the situation that the train is already sitting at the platform and in front of the red signal. And this is what the signaler is showing us here, giving us just an orange warning. Same situation as if this train wouldn't be here at all. What he have shown us is something like this. At least this is what the Fahrdienstvorschriften provide for that. It is an additional signal that tells us that the track in front of us is occupied, so that we do not have the full block for us, but that there is already a train on the track in the block, and that we need to enter with caution. This is what this bar is for. So I think our signaler should have shown us something like this. If you have watched the video about the system N last week, then you might remember that there is a signal that looks like this, also with a bar, but with a flashing bar, and that was a signal that told us that the distance to the next signal here is shorter than it would usually be. A shorter distance, verkürzter Abstand, and that we have to go slowly, 40 kilometers maximum, and that we have to be wary to stop in front of the end of the track or a red signal. This is the short run aspect here. It's a bit different from the logic, because this is an aspect in itself, and this is a warning signal with an additional signal that tells us that the block in front of us is occupied. So this can also happen on a block that is normal length, and this only can happen in a block that is shorter than usual. And one of the two signals I would have expected now in this situation. It does not necessarily need to be a red light, it can also be a buffer block, so the end of the track here. We have already mentioned this. And what now if a train is standing in the short run distance? I don't know which of those signals takes precedence, or if the signaler is more or less free to use this or that, but at least one of the two I think he should have provided us with. And the signal in front of it, and this is what the Fahrdienstvorschriften say, must have a reduction of speed limit to 40. Either Ankündigung, an announcement that at this signal I have to be down to 40, or I can also have the reduction to 40 before. Those two things are possible according to the Fahrdienstvorschriften. Yeah, this is what I would have expected here. But we are just getting an ordinary warning signal. It's not so bad in our situation here because we have to go into our block and we know that the train is there. What I did not do so far is actually switch on the train protection system, the Euro-Signum, what I said and what I will have a presentation about later, to turn on the three different versions of the train protection system that runs on this train in this DLC. You have those three buttons. This turns on STM level of ETCS. This button turns on level 0 of ETCS. You always have to acknowledge it with this key here. And this turns on level 1 of ETCS. I'm not entirely sure that this is prototypical in its entirely, but we will see that in the upcoming streams about the ETCS system. Today we will be using the level STM. That leads to our display on this side telling us that Integra is running, Integra Signum, the old legacy train protection system in Switzerland, and for that we have two buttons or two indicators on our displays that have the caption INT, int, in it, and that those will light up if anything happens with the Integra Signum system. And this button here is the acknowledge or reset button for the Integra Signum system. It will also light up yellow or red, and you can acknowledge or cancel it by turning it around. That our train is working under STM, I don't know if you can really read it, is shown here in this section with these dots. It is indicating to us that we don't have a continuous train guiding system running, but only one that comes in intervals, like from balises, and the STM for we are using the legacy system. So what do we do now? We drive into our block and we would expect that the system is warning us that we are passing a yellow signal. More to that later, but let's see if it does. And it doesn't. No reaction from our Signum system, although we passed. Hello, Han, Mr. Younger. Nice that you made it to our stream. So I don't know if Swiss trains stop in front of the other train before coupling, but I will do that because this is, I think, a practice that makes sense regardless of where in the earth you are. Oh. And now we coupled. The train in front of us copied our PIS setting. What we have to do, we have to set our brakes to a full service here. We have to reset the reverser to neutral. We have to lock this here. You see, if I lock this command stand, then all the settings for the train protection system gets deleted or get deleted as well. And now I have to walk to the other train and take over the cab in the other train. And for that I obviously have to leave the train. And run to the front. Again, I won't bother with the timing of this scenario because I want to go through it very carefully and show whatever I can show. This leads to us being really late on this service, In general, the scenarios are very, very tight when it comes to timetable. Let's have some lights. Unlock. To forward. The passengers here can have some lights too. I want to have the STM again. And now I actually set. I cannot set something other than S1 to Gütsch, but we are not going to Gütsch, but we are going to Luzern. Also, I can already turn on some windscreen wipers. I think that the scenario wants us to go through its procedure. It wants us to release the brakes and then load the passengers. Okay, maybe I would have done this the other way around, but good train wants to do it like this. Let's see if I can enter something else here now. And now we have the Regional Express Basel SBB, because we are the fast service, we are not the S-Bahn, so I think this is the correct one for that. Anything else to set up? I think we are good. Can turn off the lights here. And you can see that we have signals ahead, a yellow signal with a 10 that tells us that we have to expect a reduction in speed limit to 10 at the next signal. And before we get to the next signal, we can run lines. Oops, that was a bit hard. So much power I did not want to apply. I just want to set the limiter up. And now you could hear and see the Integra system working. You can see this indicator flashing yellow. It is lit up steadily until I acknowledge it, and then it is still flashing to remind us that we just passed an orange signal. The strange thing is in this DLC that it does that quite often, like passing here. The signal that tells us green, but you are limited to 100, provokes the same warning from the Integra system. What is a bit weird. I would not have expected this. It should warn us about yellow signals, not about a green signal that just relays a limit in speed, in track speed. Now we know why we got this limit, because we are going across the switch. As soon as we are across the switch, we can go back to line speed. Oh, what did I do? It says load passengers. It is green, but it did not load it completely. Maybe I should go back. I should take the scenario with us so that we don't run without the scenario completely. But this will be much quicker now. So what do we have to do? Lights, lights, unlock, forward, STM. Another thing, if I try to set it to something, now it says Regionalbahn SBB Basel, but now it works. Okay, the scenario wants us to push the button when it asks us to, and not before that. Again, we have opportunity to wait for the train to pass, and then we can go. Here actually the Integra system gives us a warning again at the green signal with a 60. So obviously I can't exclude completely that this is how it is supposed to work, but definitely I would not have expected to get an Integra warning every time I pass a green signal, even if there is a speed reduction with it. So and we will see we will be getting a lot of Integra warnings even at completely green signals and even in spots where there are no signals at all. So again asking the signaler if we can proceed, and he tells us yes we can. And here we are. Full service on the brake, reverse it to neutral. Unlock the windscreen wiper. It does not stop on its own. You have to turn it off. Turn off the lights and go to the other train. And this time not forgetting to get over the load the passengers. So that I can progress the scenario. Unlock, reverser, STM, train lights. The PIS is already set. Windscreen, light off. And now it definitely wants us to release the brake and to unlock the doors. Yeah. It seems to be a bit of a strange sequence, releasing the brake first and then unlocking the doors. It will actually not be a problem here on this more or less level ground because the train is applying some brake force anyway until I put the combined brake and power lever into power. So this is the gauge for the brake cylinders. Now we're actually better in time. The loading times in the scenarios are much longer than in the timetable mode, interestingly. Okay, now we can actually start. And again, look at the button, how it lights up yellow. Continues until I acknowledge. Then in intervals the beeping and flashing, so that we get reminded of something that is upcoming. I think it makes sense that the system reacts on a yellow signal that announces oh, I'm sorry. Next time I will do this in a different position. I don't see the logo on my screen here. So here's the switch. We're going over the switch. As soon as we are across the switch, what takes a bit longer because we have a double train, double traction. then we can accelerate and go to line speed, what is 160 here. So those signaled speed limits, they usually end as soon as you are clear of the switches. We are passing Oberkirch at the moment. Green signals. And our next stop is in Sempach-Neuenkirch. So we will have to pass Nottwil at the lake. And then there will be the reduction to 125 and 120 in track speed limit. And I think in Sempach I will give you my thoughts about the Integra Signum, Euro-Signum and Euro-Signum over ETCS Level STM. This is Nottwil here, by the lake. You will see we're not getting a warning from the Integra Signum system that there is an incoming reduction in track speed limit. Integra Signum, Euro-Signum, it's only for signaled reductions and signals that tell you to stop at a certain point. Speed limit changes are covered by a different system that is not implemented in the game. The ETCS implementation that is in the game, we will see that in an upcoming stream, also signals a reduction. Here's the 120 reduction advanced warning board. Can set the limiter to 120 so that I know where I have to end up. And then here you will see it in a second. Here is the striped board that tells us this is where the speed reduction actually starts. So now you can see that here we went into a limit of 120. It will still reduce to 125 first, and then it will reduce to 120, what is not so shocking for us because we have to stop in Sempach-Neuenkirch anyway. So we just do our usual stopping sequence. Here's the 120 announced, and soon we will see the striped board where the 120 starts. We will have to initiate our slowdown anyway. Here is a yellow signal. See the system react. Now you could see it, right? And now you can see the indicator flashing and the button flashing yellow. So how are we speed wise? Yeah, more or less on the brake curve. It's always a bit dangerous if you're running without the HUD and move the cameras around to show stuff, because we still have to drive the train. Exit signal is yellow as well, so we passed the yellow, and the next one obviously already turned from red to yellow. Yeah, obviously my stop is a bit slow, so that we are not really on time. But as I said, I don't want to run this scenario as hard as you need to run it to actually get gold here, because the timetable is really tightened on the scenarios here in this DLC. What I wanted to do is to give you my presentation about the Integra Signum and Swiss safety systems as a whole, so that we know what we are talking about. If you're talking about railways in Switzerland, then you have more or less two sections. You have the normal gauge railway, and you have a lot of smaller railways that run on narrow gauges, meter gauges or other gauges, and those two sections have different train control or safety systems. For the normal gauge railway, they introduced the Integra Signum system, the original legacy train protection system, about 1933, 1934. So this is a really old legacy system. And it contained of two magnets, one in the middle of the track and one magnet on the outside of the right rail. So you can already see that it can distinguish between a train that is running from left to right or a train that is running from right to left, but because only the train running in the correct direction will pick up the right magnet. In 1979, I think, they upgraded the system so that it also can stop a train that tries to run a red signal. That was not a thing before. And in 1992 they introduced a system that also can calculate brake curves and warn the driver about reductions in track speed limit. That gets information from a third thing that is on the track. So they put a Gleiskoppelspule, it is called in German. What is, if you translate it word by word, it is more or less a track connecting coil, so a transponder, if you define it from what it does. And this transponder told the train information about how far the distance is until the next speed limit reduction occurs, and how hard the train has to slow down, so that the computer can calculate a brake curve and warn the driver if he's going too fast. That was introduced in 1992, and if you have watched my stream about the GNT, for example, in Germany, the tilting train protection system, they have a system that is called quite similar. It was the first one, it was the ZUB 122. So those systems are really not the same, obviously, but they have a lot of similarities. Also here, for the tilting trains, you get as a train or a driver information about the status of the track ahead in terms of static limit changes. Not signaling information, but information about track speed limits changing and stuff. And we have in Denmark a system that is called ZUB 123. So you can see that in Switzerland, Germany and Denmark we have actually running systems out of the same kitchen. They are all devised and built by Siemens Mobility, as far as I know. So you don't necessarily need to be surprised why this system has almost the same name as a system that is used in Germany for controlling the tilting trains. That was in the 90s, and then, yeah, well, let's have a look at the narrow gauge world. Rätische Bahn, I took this as a special case because we have the Arosa-Linie in the game, and this is what happens on the Arosa-Linie that is run by the Rätische Bahn. They have a system that is called ZSI 90. Since around 1987, they had some other systems before, but the system of this layout about that time, 1987, and it is the system with the two magnets next to each other in the track, a two-channel system, and this is covered in one of the videos that we did a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in how that works and how that is implemented, you can watch this video and get information there. Just as you can watch the GNT video to get more information about the tilting train control and the ZUB 122. Yes. There were other systems for other railways. They had a system that is the oldest one, Zugstopp, that more or less stopped a train at the red signal in times when Integra Signum did not stop trains at red signals. And not ZSI, but ZST90 variants are around a lot with magnets that are in one line, so a one-channel system. Sometimes they are put on outside of the middle so that the track can distinguish between trains running in either direction or next to the track, but usually in the middle. And there is a system that works with a continuous transformer with a continuous transponder, just like we know that from LZB, linienförmige Zugbeeinflussung, for example, so that the train can get continuously information about the status of the track or signals even. That is quite expensive, this system. It's been around since the 90s too, and from what you can read in the internet, it is used by 3 smaller railways in Switzerland and 1 more railway in the world. For whatever reason, I don't know why this is like this, the airport railway in Kuala Lumpur is using that system too, from what you can read. If that is true, I don't know. I did not check. So this is more or less the legacy from the last, before year 2000, and then ETCS started to be a thing, and ETCS hardware was sold and installed everywhere. And so on the normal gauge world in Switzerland, they removed their magnets for the Integra Signum and the Gleiskoppelspulen for the ZUB, and they were using ETCS hardware. Those are the Euro-balises and the Euro-loops, continuous and non-continuous transponders, and they ran their legacy system, the Signum and the ZUB, over this hardware about since 2003. Can never be sure if the years are completely correct, because they started to try it out and then they had some routes where they used it, and then they decided to implement it on a larger scale. So this is always just approximately to get a picture for that. And then you used the ETCS hardware, the balises and the loops, and ran the old system on it. And this is what we did in Germany for the GNT. We upgraded the ZUB 122 to ZUB 262, and this is still working in Germany at the moment. It is also running on balises and no longer on Gleiskoppelspulen. So quite a similar development. Apart from that, in the future and what is done nowadays in the high-speed sector, they are actually upgrading all their trains to ETCS Level 2. ETCS Level 2, we will get to that in the streams to come, relies on balises only to position the train actually, and all the information about speed limits and signaling the train will get via the GSM-R radio. And this is ETCS Level 2, everything by radio except positioning with balises. We will get to that in the ETCS streams. But this is quite expensive, and so it is only implemented on the high-speed sector so far in Switzerland. For the conventional rail, the non-high-speed rail, what we are running, they decided not so many years ago to run it on ETCS Level 1 limited supervision. So ETCS Level 1, we will get to that, also tells us that we are getting our information about the track and speed limits from balises and the Euro loops. This is why it is Level 1, radio is Level 2. And limited supervision just tells us we are not really using the full ETCS cap signaling system, but relies on every junction, every signal, every part of the track is actually fitted with ETCS hardware, but we use our legacy system inside of ETCS Level 1. This is why it is called limited supervision. How this actually works is quite fragmented across the different countries that implemented it. We will get to this in the ETCS streams too. but as far as I know, there is no train simulator that really simulates limited supervision, ETCS Level 1 limited supervision, not even Sursee, at least the version that I have. I did not find any simulated ETCS Level 1 limited supervision. On the Rätische Bahn, on the narrow gauge, they upgraded their system in 2015 in a similar way. They got rid of all the magnets and used ETCS hardware, balises and loops with a new system that is called ZSI 127. So what we have in the Arosa linie in our game here is already outdated as far as I know. It should be replaced by this ZSI 127 stuff by now. And there are actually some railways that run on a communication-based train control, where the trains are controlled by radio signals, not necessarily GSMR, but whatever radio signal. So you can see there is quite a diverse landscape of different train control systems in Switzerland. And what did they do in the meantime until 2017? They ran their conventional rail on their old legacy systems, but incorporated it in the ETCS. So they had their ETCS trains and with the ETCS hardware, for example, but they ran the old Euro-Signum, Euro-ZUB system that comes in through the balises. They had already switched it to the Euro-Signum, Euro-ZUB on the balises in 2003, and so it was not a big thing to incorporate it in the ETCS, and this is called the ETCS Level STM, Special Transmission Module, I think is the acronym. If not, I will give you the correct long version of this in the ETCS streams. And this runs on Eurobalises, Euroloops, more or less replicates those old systems, but it can also run on an ETCS train that is fitted with ETCS hardware. And this is what is implemented in our game here. So we are running Euro-Signum, not the Euro-ZUB. This is not implemented, only the Euro-Signum over ETCS Level STM. So now we know where we are actually working at the moment. I hope this was not boring, but I think it is always a good idea to see how everything fits into the picture. Very good. Thank you, AJ. Now we can have a look at what safety systems there actually are on our train, on our RABe 523 FLIRT train, or at least which are supposed to be there. You know my matrix already. We have usually systems that check if the driver is present, if the driver is active, if the driver is reacting to track speed limits, and if the driver is reacting to signals. And here we have, or we should have, a system in Switzerland that is called Sicherheitssteuerung, or Schnellgang, fast run. If you want to read it up, I gave you the source for it here, Ausführungsbestimmungen zur Eisenbahnverordnung ABEBV, this article number and the section AB 50.2 with a validity of the 1st of November 2020. So if you want to read it up and you can understand the German, then you can read it up there, how those systems are actually supposed to work. And this is something that you know from a British train, the DSD. You have to press a pedal when the train is moving, and as soon as you release it, then you will get an alarm and you have to press it again. So this is a system that just checks if the driver is present. It is not implemented in the game. This is why it is grayed out here. Not implemented in the game is also the Wachsamkeitskontrolle, the vigilance equipment, if you want to compare it with British trains. Langsamgang, for some reason it is called the slow run. And this means the train is checking if the driver is operating controls, and if the driver is not operating controls within a certain time frame, and then he has to release and press the pedal again because he will get an alarm, and if he doesn't, then he will get a penalty break. This is also not implemented in the game, but this is very, very, very close to what you have on the modern British trains, DSD vigilance. What we have implemented is a system that checks if the driver is reacting to signals, and this is our Euro-Signum over ETCS Level STM, what we are running today. And this is quite similar to the British AWS a bit. It's not completely similar, but it warns the driver about upcoming caution signals. And this is why the driver has to acknowledge warning signals that are yellow. This is what we already did when we ran our train, when we turned this button after we passed an orange signal. So we get an alarm, we have to acknowledge it, otherwise we will get a penalty brake. And this system can also stop the train if the train tries to run a red signal without having permission. There is also a button, or there should be a button, like the Befehl 40 in the PCB regime in Germany, that allows the driver to override this train stop. Also the TPWS in Great Britain has a button of that kind, and then if the driver has authority to pass the red signal, then the train will not get stopped. But this is the Haltauswertung that was introduced in 1979 into the old Integra Signum system, and it still runs on the Euro-Signum system as well. And you can build with the Euro-Signum over speed control, but typically speed control would be done with the Euro-ZUB, I think. And this is not implemented in our DLC here. So you can see what is implemented out of what should be on this train, and most of it is not, but at least the Euro-Signum is. How does the old Integra Signum system work, or how did it work when it was introduced in 1934? This is something that is quite interesting to see, at least for me, not only what the driver sees of that system, but also to see how clever those systems were built. You have a track, you have a train, and you want to warn the driver that he just passed an orange signal, a signal at warning. So you want the train to give the driver an alarm, so that in case the driver was not attentive and missed the orange signal, he gets reminded by the train. So this is the general idea from almost 100 years ago. And how to build a system that is fail-safe and that probably does not need any current and any electricity everywhere, and that works even if there is snow on the track or ice or whatever. That was actually the challenge, to do that. And what they did, they put those two magnets on the track, one in the middle and one on the outside of the right rail, and you have two corresponding magnets on your train. The one in the middle is called the excitation magnet. This is either a permanent magnet or a magnet that is connected with a battery, an electromagnet that is run by a battery, so that it can actually be switched on or off. And corresponding to that, you have a transmitting magnet in the track receiver side, because it receives the signal that's coming from this magnet on the train. Then you have a transmitting magnet in the track exciter side, because it gives the signal back to the train, and you have a receiving magnet on the train. And the idea is actually to send a signal from this magnet to this magnet via those two magnets, if the signal that is passed here is at caution, at warning, at orange. And how do we do that? We connect those two with a wire, and we have a switch that allows us to shortcut this circuit here. So what happens if actually this magnet is activated by the battery and it passes this magnet in the middle of the track? Then this magnet gets excited, meaning the magnet field here induces an electric current in this circuit here, and the current on the other hand induces a magnetic field on this magnet here, and the magnetic field that is induced here, or that is created here, can be picked up by this magnet here. So this magnet gives back an electrical signal to the train, and the train knows, oh, I just passed a pair of magnets that are connected. That means I just passed an orange signal what do? I sound an alarm. I warn my driver, in case he did not see the signal, that he just passed a signal that is showing a Warnung, a caution aspect. If the same signal is not at orange but at green, what do? I close the switch. And what happens then? Then the magnet excites this magnet. This magnet induces a current, and the current goes the way of the least resistance, so not through this other magnet but through the switch. And then this magnet does not get excited, and the train does not pick up a magnetic field here. So if the signal is green, the switch is closed, no signal will be sent back to the train. If the switch is open, a signal will send back to the train. So this is the fail-safe idea again. In case something breaks here and the shortcut loop does not work, then the signal will fall into the warning position, what is obviously the safer thing to do. If we look on our sequence from green signals over orange signals to the red signal with repeaters in the middle, so this is the main signal B, the main signal A, main signal B is at green, the main signal A is at red, the distance signal in front of the main signal A is at warning correspondingly. So the original system only had magnets at the distance signals, not on the main signals but on distance signals. So here on the green one, the switch would be closed, the train would excite this magnet, the current would run through the switch, not through the magnet, no signal back, no alarm. Regardless whether this is just the announcement of clear or the clear aspect itself. On the main signal there are no magnets, and here the switch is open, magnet gets excited, current runs through the other magnet gets picked up by the receiving magnet in the train, and we have our alarm. We will hear the sound and our button will light up in yellow, and then we have to acknowledge it within 5 seconds or we will get a penalty break. Then the button here will turn red. Whether this penalty break actually worked in the years 1934 already, or whether it was only a warning system in the beginning, I do not know. But this is actually what was implemented for the system to work, so that the train will get stopped if you don't acknowledge it. Just like a British train gets stopped if the driver does not acknowledge or cancel the AWS alarm. Yeah, and that's it. On the main signal there were no magnets, so the driver was not stopped to pass a red signal with this system here. And this obviously proved to be a bit of a security problem or a safety problem, and this is why they installed the Haltauswertung, the train stop system, in 1979, or about that. And how did they do that? Going back to our setup here, they replaced the receiving magnet on the train by a magnetic field probe that can not only react to an excited magnet, but that can read polarity. Because a magnet that is working has typically two sides, two poles, a positive and a negative one, and this magnetic field probe can read which side of the magnet, which polarity it reads first. So this magnet, if it excites the magnet in the track, then there will be a certain sequence of the polarity, positive negative or negative positive, and also on the other magnet. So I've tried to show this on my diagram here with green and red, and then the magnetic field probe can pick it up, and when it runs across the magnet it gets first green and then red, or first red and then green, and then the train can distinguish between the two statuses here. So how is it implemented in our sequence from green over yellow to red? First, the same thing that we have before. Closed on a green, even if the magnet gets excited, no matter whether it is a polarity or not, the current runs through the switch, no signal gets back to the magnetic field probe, no alarm. Regardless whether it is announcement or the clear aspect already. On the warning signal, the switch is open and the circuit runs through both magnets, and the magnet will display a certain pattern here. And if it displays a pattern that is first negative and then positive when the train runs over it, the train knows I have just passed a distance signal that is at an orange aspect, and then it can run its sequence that we already know, light up the button, sound the alarm, wait for acknowledge, or initiate a penalty brake. And how can I use this polarity now to implement a train stop system at the red signal here? We do what we are usually not allowed to do or warned about to do in movies and computer games. We cross the wires. We cross the wiring here between the two magnets, and then the polarity gets turned around. So if we have still the same polarity on this magnet because of the crossed wires now, this magnet here will show just the opposite sequence to this setup here. So instead of picking up a negative positive sequence, the train will pick up a positive negative sequence in a very short succession, and then the train knows, or the electronics on the train knows, whoops, this is not a good situation, you should never get a positive and then a negative in a short succession. We have to stop this train immediately because we just ran a red main signal. On a green main signal, the wires are crossed as well, but then obviously crossing does not make any difference because green, switch closed, cut short, the current runs through the switch, not through the magnet, no feedback to the train. Nothing happens here. So this is how the train stop system in the Integra system worked, as far as I understood it, and as far as I can relate it here as not being a technician, but I just really admire the ingenuity of working with so simple stuff, like so simple principles, and you can see you don't need a socket for those things. Yeah, you just build them in the track, and all the energy that is needed is brought by the train and works back. And even with snow on the track, highly reliable, but obviously limited in what it can do. Another thing is, what do I do with these signals? You might remember those are combined signals. A main signal that has this squarish plate because it can also display distant signal aspects, or aspects that are usually associated with distant signals. I did not find any source on how the wiring was done here. I guess that you will have a second switch that allows you to cross and uncross the wires in accordance to whether this signal is working as a main signal and showing a red aspect, or if it is only showing a warning aspect and working as a distance signal. Probably in a way that the fail-safe version sets it to the main signal so that it will be read as a red signal. But I did not find any sources for that. If you know how that was done, leave your intel in the comments. I'd be very happy about that. Yeah, AJ, you're still with me, or am I losing my audience when I get lost into all these technicalities? I hope not. Yeah, we're almost done. Now the next step was thank you very much. The next step was taking the system to Euro-Signum 2003. That was, I told you already, we get rid of all the old hardware. We are throwing out the magnets, we are throwing out the magnets on the train, on the track, and what we have on the track now are the ETCS hardware stuff, the Euro-balises and the Euro-loops. Euro-balises to transpond information into the train when it is passing, and the loops to do that in a continuous fashion. Those Euro-loops, from what I read, can be up to 1 kilometer long, and yeah, this is this can ensure just in front of signals that the train gets updated every moment about signal changes and stuff. And the train needs to have a device that can pick up the signals from those transponders. So the trains got, before they got their ETCS caps, their Euro caps, the real ETCS train side hardware, they got specific Eurobelay transmission modules. So the existing trains in Switzerland were fitted with those things so that they can read the ETCS balises without being a fully equipped ETCS cab. And I think they were called Rucksack, a backpack that they were putting on their train so that they can read this stuff. And then they were more or less simulating what the Integra Signum and the ZUB did through this hardware stuff. So no more magnets, no more Gleiskoppelspulen, but sending all the information through the balises and the loops. Obviously you need balises that are not static only, but they can be programmed, so infill balises, but we will get to that stuff in the ETCS streams. For the driver's side, it is more or less the same. The technique or the tech changed, but when you look at it as a driver, it is more or less the same stuff. You now have a display with those indicators. That is more or less new because the old trains did not have displays, but you still have your button that can light up yellow or red, or in the older trains maybe not the button lit up but the lamp lit up and you had the button underneath. I don't know. Most probably it was like this. The thing is, on green signals, actually there should not be any reaction. You get a lot of reaction on green signals in the game, the way it is at the moment, but from what you can read in the sources, the system should not react on green systems. So the indicator should not light up and this button should not light up either, regardless whether it is an announcement of clear or a clear signal here. Yeah, same thing on the green main signal. On the distance signal, the button lights up yellow. You hear the alarm and the left indicator gets lit up yellow as well. And this you can see in the train quite nicely. The button lights up yellow and this indicator lights up yellow. You hear the alarm. It is continuous at first. Then you have to acknowledge it within about 5 seconds. Otherwise you will get the penalty brake and the button will turn to red and the other indicator will light up in red. This is what actually happens in the game. I have tried it out. This should happen when we try it out later in our service as well. And on the red signal you should not get any warning, you just should get a penalty brake and a red indicator lighting up here. I guess it should look like this without the yellow, but this I tried to do in the game, but I did not find any situation where it worked. When you try to run a red signal in the game, then you just spat out from the game, but I've never managed to see any reaction of the Euro-Signum system in the game so far. We can maybe do this after we finish this scenario, this service. This is just at the beginning of the service. Again, we have a red signal, we can try it, but it is probably not implemented here. Yeah. Was that what I wanted to tell? Yeah, this other, the combined signal that can show all the aspects, can work as a distance signal or can work as a main signal. They actually do the same stuff as a distance signal, so it does not matter whether it is a combined signal or a distance signal, main signal. As soon as it is displaying an orange aspect, it will go into this routine. Whether it does the same if you get an orange signal that announces a reduction in speed limit, so an orange signal with a numeral that tells you you don't have to stop at the next signal, but you have to reduce your speed, whether this routine is used in the same way on those signals, I'm not completely sure. I guess it is the same here, but I could not verify that. If you know how that works in real life in Switzerland, or maybe if it only warns you about speed reductions up to a certain number or of a certain severeness, then leave it in the comments, please. I'd be very interested to know more about that. I guess as long as you get an orange light up here, you will get the system reacting. but I cannot tell you whether this is actually the case or not. And on a green signal that also displays a numeral, I think it should not react the system, but also this I cannot really verify because I've never driven a train in Switzerland across those signals. In my understanding, as long as the signal is green, the system should not react. As long as the signal is orange, the system should react. But if there is anything more to know about those speed reduction announcements and the speed reduction enforcements, I cannot tell. Yeah, the next thing is for the end of the service. We can go back to train driving. Again, while we're waiting for the passengers to board, I switch on the light. This is our button here that can be turned. It can be yellow, it can be red, and those are the indicators here. The left one that can be yellow and this one that can be red. I think at the next opportunity I will just not acknowledge and run into a penalty brake so that we can see how that looks and is implemented, and how we can recover from that. Lock our doors, release the brakes. Oh. What happened now with our brakes? Did we do anything wrong? I just saw that the brakes bumped up again. Ah, this is because I had the combined lever still in a position that wanted some air brakes. Let's hope that we still get an orange signal somewhere and did not lose the orange signals because we were losing so much time. We are in a 120 limit here until we get to Rothenburg. The warning lights at the level crossings in Switzerland should not flash the way that we just saw it, like both lamps in unisono, but they should flash alternatingly. Yeah, that's true. That is actually a nice touch to the British system, where you always have a certain distance between your AWS magnet and the signal. Also, when passing an AWS magnet, you know that there will be a signal in a short distance ahead. And now, for some reason, we got the system reacted on a completely green signal. I missed the opportunity to show a penalty brake here because I acknowledged it automatically. Next time I will try to not acknowledge it. But this is more or less hardwired in my fingers. As soon as I get an alarm, I hit the acknowledge button. Here's the big cheese again. Here's a yellow signal. And now I don't acknowledge it. And poof, red. Red. you could hear the air going out of the brain, going out of the brain of the brake pipe, the train pipe, and into the cylinders. And now we got a penalty brake. The train is stopped because we did not acknowledge, and this is what it is supposed to look like. And now it goes off again. Don't know if that is what it is supposed to do. I don't need to acknowledge it anymore. Now this indicator here is on. That tells us that the brakes are on, that the emergency brake has been initiated. What do we do to reset it? We set our combined power brake lever to 0 and the train brakes into emergency. And then if we move the train brake lever back into full service, for example, this indicator goes off and we can release the brakes and apply power and go on. So this is the recovery process for this kind of penalty brake. Air out of the brain, yeah. Should have some more oxygen in the brain, I guess. I was not sure whether I wanted to say train pipe like on the vacuum brakes or brake pipe like on the air brakes. Reduction to 110 does not bother us because we have to stop here at Rothenburg anyway, where we can set it that we don't forget it. Maybe I should slow down a bit. Signal is still red. It's actually waiting for us, I guess. This is a tricky stop here usually, because at the end of the platform the train always accelerates a bit. Or at least it seems to. So you think it is already coming to a stop. But then it runs on. Yeah. And our signal cleared. I think there is only one more stop until we get to Luzern, and then we have to get the train into the shed, and then the service is done. We talked about the Sicherheitssteuerung. That would be the pedal for it, but as you can see, it is not animated. It is just there, but you cannot use it. Now we're passing Rothenburg Dorf. There is a reduction to 90. while we are going in a descent. So we have to apply a bit of the electric brakes. And here is the sign telling us 90 incoming. That was a bit hectic. Well, let's just slow down to 90. So in this direction, the speed reduction makes sense. We talked about it in the last stream that going the other way, this speed changing point was not really signaled anywhere in the game. Here it works well. Now we're getting to the signal where we got stopped in this one service that we could not finish because there was a green light for the branching line and no train ever coming. Yeah, another thing that I wanted to point out here. If we look at this diagram here, that shows us the speed that we are supposed to run. We are in a 90 section at the moment, and you can see this strange marking here. This is a very, very short section of the track where we are limited to 80. And why are we limited to 80 in just this tiny amount of track? I think this is more or less an error in building the tracks, because this is a point where a switch is going off or coming in, and we are not going over the switch, we're just going straight ahead, but the speed limit of the switch bleeds in our track anyway. So for a very tiny part of the track we get an 80 limit, then we are back to a 90 limit, but because we have to run the full length of our train to get out of this reduction again, we will be limited for a corresponding number of meters until we can go back to the 90 again. This happens sometimes on across all the DLCs. I think it is a bit annoying, and I've never read anything about it on the forum, so maybe we should address this so that this does not happen anymore. Because here obviously you don't get any signs for it, because I don't think that it is intentional that you have to slow down to 80 just because you are passing the switch in the straight line without ever touching any moving parts of the switch here. So just as I said, there are no signals indicating that we have to slow down here. This is a signal that was perma-red in one of the broken services. Now it is not. And the part of track in question, you can maybe see it if I have it like this. I will slow down to 80. It is still upcoming here. And now here is the switch. Now we are in it. And now that the train is on the spot where we are limited to the 80, it shows us quite a long stretch of track where we are limited to 80. But it's actually only this tiny bit, but now the train has to run its full length until it is back into its original limit. So maybe you could see the switch here. And now we are already out of it. And in retrospective, we can see that there was this part of the track where we were limited to 80. Obviously we did not know it because there was no signage, and we ran through it and we lost the points for this section of the track because we obviously ran above speed limit here. The reduction to 85 is totally legitimate. That is upcoming after this station here. Here 85. And the execution sign for it. Again a yellow, because we have to stop. Does not bug us because we have to stop at Emmenbrücke anyway. Was a bit late on the brakes, so should not really use maximum brakes, not even the dynamics. But with the dynamics it cannot be so harsh. Ooh. Yeah, 500 point, even if it was a harsh stop. Signal still red. Train from the opposite direction sitting next to us. Nice touch. Actually, sometimes the lighting, especially in the rain, is much nicer if there are clouds in the sky. The lighting that the game has the biggest trouble with, I think, is the really hard lighting on sunny days, no clouds in the sky, sun deep over the horizon or low over the horizon. The other train is getting ready to depart. We still have to wait for our passengers. Signal switch to green, that is nice. Did I release my train brake before? And then one of the last things that I have for this stream is connected with the signaling system L, not the signaling system N. Because now we're actually getting an orange signal here. So we should expect the next signal being red. That would be cool. Let's see if that is actually red. The thing is, we have to go over a switch here that only allows 60. And typically the signaling system should warn you about a reduction of that kind, because it is... I hate in real life when train stops right next to my cab and passengers are looking at me while I'm doing... Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, but I would look too. On some of the subway trains in the city that I live in, there is actually a glass wall behind the driver, so you can actually look the driver over the shoulder and watch what he is doing. Must be super annoying for the driver. So we have actually a red signal here. Obviously of the L type, with a distance signal for the next main signal, telling us that it is red as well. Okay, signaler, you know I am here, I'm waiting at the signal. Don't forget me. Now we have to wait. What I wanted to demonstrate here is how this limit to 60 is signaled in the system L. We have already seen those aspects, but not in the game yet, only on my presentation, and it's this signal here. The green over green typically tells you from here on your limit to 60, and this is quite helpful if you are going over a switch, because the speed limit for the switch you wouldn't know, and you would probably not know exactly across which switch you are routed if there are more than one possibilities. And maybe we get this signal as soon as it turns to green. That would be nice. Then we actually have this aspect introduced in the game. I know that this signal in the game can display this aspect. What you usually do not get in the game is the corresponding distance signal when you are not as late as we are in the scenario. Then you don't get a red signal here, but you are running straight through, and then you only get green over green on the distance signal in front of that aspect. But you should get at least this green over green 60 kilometers aspect. Yeah, that was what I wanted to show in connection with this signal. Let's hope that it actually switches to this green over green aspect as soon as we are allowed to go. Yeah, it switched. Green over green, limit to 60 here. Unfortunately, the corresponding distance signal does not show the aspect of yellow over green. It is the one on the other side of this bridge here. It should display a full green now, unfortunately. But as you can see, this signal head probably cannot do it. Well, it has a green lamp or an orange lamp here, so it is able to do it, to show this orange lamp here over the two greens. That should be the corresponding distance signal to this aspect here. Well, thank you, signaler. I will go on. You don't have to switch the signal back to red. I don't know if that is a thing that a signaler is actually allowed to do. If a driver is waiting for too long and not starting the train after the signal switched to green, that a signaler can say, okay, if you don't want, then I give the right of way to a different train and switch you back to red. Probably not. So most probably the signaler or dispatcher would contact the driver. Yeah, well. By the way, this was the 60, and I went too fast because I was musing about this problem. This was the 60 switch, so now the train is over, but I actually violated the maximum speed of the switch, although the signals warned us about. In the timetable mode, by the way, you would be routed across another switch that is later in the run, like about here or even later on, and there you do not get this green over green aspect. You just get greens, full greens all the way, and the limit to 60 on the switch is not signaled at all. This is another thing why I picked up this scenario here, because here you can actually see this aspect in action. Now we're already closing in on Luzern main station through this set of tunnels and into the darkness again. Yes, it's always into the darkness. As dark as it is hard to see the warning board that announces the reduction to 40. I think it is on the signal bridge after this tunnel here. Here on the other side of the track, on the right side, this is the announcement board of the 40 reduction. You can't really see it. So probably it wouldn't be so bad, instead of giving us clears, what is technically okay because the line speed is at 40 at this point, they could signal us down and giving us the corresponding aspects for announcement of 40 and then execution of 40 on the signals. The aspects exist, so it wouldn't be a problem. Would be a nice additional reminder in case you missed that 40 announcement signal on the right side of the track, or maybe it is totally possible that there is a train coming the other direction and blocking the view to those signs on the right side of the track. So, we made it to Luzern after all, with a bit more than 5 minutes late. Well, with all the explaining, I am sure that the passengers will understand. Here's one of the buffer blocks with a red lamp on top. But we are not finished yet. We have to take the train to the depot. What we can do already, can change the PIS. I thought I can do it. I cannot do it yet. Sometimes it does not allow it. Now it works. Geschlossen. Closed. This train is going to the depot. But we will have to walk to the other end probably to get the train into the depot. We can lock the doors. Get the throttle to 0. It is still in braking settings. Set the reverser to neutral. Parking mode button. Yeah, this is that button here. That is a parking brake that can be released and applied from both ends, and is the perfect means if you want to swap caps or ends, so that the train does not run away in the meantime. We can turn off the lights here. We can turn off the train lights as well, so that the train is already fit for depot. Don't forget the windscreen wipers. For some reason the lights are still on, even though I said I wanted to switch them off. Yeah, we cannot walk to the other side because we have two trains. So we have to go to the outside. But what is it here? It's number 5. Maybe one thing that I can showcase here, just like on the Arosa linie, they modeled those signals here for the guard signals or exit signals, like setting the departure signal. Can see that the signal is already green for this train, and I can give the guard signal that the train has clearance for departure, so no passengers fell into the gap and nobody got caught in the door or whatever. The problem is on this route here that you cannot really see those signals from the position where you are parked at the platform. Or can you see the departure, the clearance for departure signals? Hardly. You can hardly see the exit signal here. Master key unlocked. Then you can see here it is lit because this button operates the parking brake for the whole train, and you can set it and unset it from both ends. Or it's really very convenient that the train does not run away while you are changing ends. Set the reverse to forward, yeah, obviously. We will have our train protection system anyway. This train is still on Regionalbahn. We want it to be closed as well. For the PIS, yeah, no, this works as well. In the train brake to release. No, you can't see it. Nobody can see that. Now we're going into the siding, into the depot. I will tell you when to look for this clearance for departure signal. It is there, but it is so far away that you really have to depart to see your clearance for departure signal. Here, just below the green signal, there is this very, very weak white over green diagonally departure signal. Again, it's nice that they modeled it, but you need binoculars or something like this to see that signal from the position where you are located at the platform. And if you have to depart so that you can see the clearance for departure signal, and it probably does not do the trick. Now we're going in the shed. What is really modeled very nice. It's a bit of a pity that the light is so low going into this shed here with all those installations for maintaining the trains. Probably we can turn the wipers off. Can see our headlights mirrored in the window. Okay, that was the run. We will have performed very badly, I'm afraid, because of our penalty break here, boop, between the stations. And you can be relaxed, AJ. I got the gold medal on this scenario yesterday, but actually it's one of the scenarios where you have to move your train back and forth a bit to pick up the extra points for the gold medal, because even if you run the scenario perfectly on time and never speed, there are not enough points, at least from my perception. There are still like 60 or 70 points missing, so you have to take your train a bit back and forth at the platform, what you obviously would not do in real life, to get those extra points for driving below speed limit. Yeah, that was the scenario for today. What I wanted to demonstrate again is replay the scenario and just try to run the red signal in the beginning to see if our system reacts to it. I already spoiled this because I said it won't. Maybe it will now, but I'm afraid it just spads. So you remember, this is our red signal where we started this scenario here. You can already set up the cab minus the light, because the light must be done when we are asked to do it. And now I just run the signal. I have to hurry a bit so that the signal does not turn green. And now just look on our button and the indicator. It should get red at once, but it does not react. It just gives us the scenario failed message because we spad it, but the signal does not react. On the Arosa-Linie it does. I've shown this on the stream, I guess, and on the British routes, on the modern ones with a working TPWS system, it also does it. It also reacts. This here has been left out. Maybe we can get Rivet to implement it so that the system actually works. Implement a bit more of the safety devices that are typically on the trains, and maybe the Euro-ZUB, more or less. We have more streams, two more videos on this DLC here to finally discuss the ETCS. I will break this into two streams. One I will run with ETCS Level 0, what nobody would do in real life, to just run it with plain ETCS Level 0. And this I will use to explain or talk about my thoughts regarding ETCS, and then the other video will be a run with ETCS Level 1 and showcasing the cab signaling system that comes with it. For today, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for moderating the stream. Thank you for your input once again, CD Radar. It was a pleasure to have you on the stream. And have a good time, take care, and see you next time.